This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, and we are recording. Good morning, everybody. So, for those of you who don't know me, I am Scott Bonney. I am Lean Six Sigma wonk, but I will not give you lots of introing right now. I'll save time for later. Welcome to the Saturday seminar series for lean leaders and other alliterators. What I want to do is real quick round the table introduction so everybody knows who's who in the zoo, and then I'm going to turn the talking stick over to Bill and Joe so they can introduce themselves and tell you a little bit about the Fjord Design Studio, because that's where we're going to start. So sorry for those folks who are on the call, but you can't tour the tour. You can't wander through the studio. NATO No Foreign Cosmetics top secret. We can't video it, or we'd have to shoot you. So we will blank the screen for that. We'll do the tour, then we'll take a quick break. Everybody who's here gets donuts. Sharon, you get nothing. Sorry, nothing personal. And then we'll roll into our regular presentations with the local group and the international students around 10:15 or so Eastern time. But times are written in wet cement, so really we're just going to do what makes sense. So again, I'll do my intro personally when we start the presentations at 10:15-ish. So I'm going to go ahead and eeny, meeny, miny, mo. You want to go ahead and kick us off? Good.
I'm Marla Warner. I'm just here with Bill today, his spouse.
I am Bill Warner, and I am a Master Black Belt who works for Scott.
I'm Rose Bacuzzi. I'm a student at AMU and a DBA candidate, and I'll be graduating in June, so Bob Key says. And I'm very glad to be here today.
I'm Tony Phillips. I'm also a student at AMU, and I'm working on my master's degree in quality systems management.
I'm Joe Golden. I'm a design director here in the studio.
I'm Bill Clement, and I am the group director and studio lead.
Good morning, I'm Rick Moy. I'm a management consultant within AFS, Accenture Federal Services. I'm a Lean Six Sigma Green Belt.
Good morning, I'm Clishia Taylor. I am a director of GHA Institute, which is an online certification program for telemedicine telehealth nurses. And I'm glad to be here. I am a nurse as well, and my colleague, she's over there filming, is Beatriz Parajave.
All right, Sharon, Dr. Burton, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hello, good morning, everyone. I am the director of SL Burton Consulting. Work with many of the folks in the room there. My specialties are Master Lean Six Sigma Black Belt, Change Management, and Learning. Glad to be with you this morning.
All right. Sorry we can't have you in person, but we appreciate you dialing in virtually. And we are at Accenture Federal Services, which is where I'm working as a associate director for, I don't even remember what my title is. It's way too long. It's like strategy and blankety blank stuff, and Lean Six Sigma practice lead. So that's what I'm going to be talking about in an hour or so. But I'm going to go ahead and turn things over to Bill and Joe, and if you all want to tell us a little bit about what we're about to do, that would be awesome.
Sure.
So Chris?
You don't have to turn the laptop around. Good morning, everybody. As I said, I'm Bill Clement. I'm the group director and studio lead for Accenture Federal Services Fjord Studio here in DC. My colleague, Dr. Joe Golden, she is very humble about that, but I will call it out. Dr. Joe Golden is not just a design director, but she is also what I think we would all in the studio believe is our sort of lead practitioner in service design, among many, many other things that she's expert in. The digital studio that we're going to be touring today, and sorry for those on the phone, so we've been around for about 3.5 years. And just to sort of set the stage, about 6 years ago, Accenture acquired a company called Fjord. Fjord was a digital design firm that specialized in service design and digital product creation, digital strategy. And when Accenture acquired Fjord, they did something really interesting. They acknowledged that Fjord had a very unique brand. Fjord had about 10 studios, I think, at that time, practicing around the world. And Accenture allowed them to not just keep their brand name, but sort of act as an entity by themselves, which is very unusual in a situation where there's an acquisition like that. But they recognized that Fjord had a very unique position in the market relative to how they taught and engaged clients in service design. About that time, Accenture Federal had a number of individuals who watched that acquisition with a lot of curiosity and started thinking about the idea of taking Fjord's methodologies in service design and digital product creation and making them fit for federal, which is adapting them to the federal market, and started thinking about how we might introduce Fjord as a studio in the Accenture Federal Services world. And it took a couple of years building a business case and persuading the management team at Accenture Federal that it was a good idea, and the Fjord team that it would be a great extension of their brand to have a Fjord studio in DC dedicated to the federal space. But in June of 2016, we opened doors at the brand new Accenture Federal Digital Studio down in New York Avenue in the district, about 6 blocks from the White House. And very quickly found that indeed there was absolutely a market for what Fjord does, service design, digital product creation, fit for federal, and began to grow very rapidly and engaging federal clients across all cabinet level agencies. And within about a year and a half, realized that we were about to bust out of our seams, and we opened a second studio, and that's actually in this building, and we'll be touring that today. We call it our Glebe Road Studio. So we like to say we are one studio with 2 locations, both do the same things, engage in the same ways, have the same skills: service designers, interaction designers, researchers, visual designers, business designers. And we'll talk a bit when we tour the studio more about what each of those folks do and how that relates to the way we engage with clients. But the most important thing to us over this past 3.5 years has been finding ways to change the way government serves its citizens and the way government serves its own people. As many of you may know, the government is not always the first in an innovative space in some areas, and one of those is modernizing their own technologies to attract the best and the brightest in the next generation of government workers. That's been a big part of our mission this past few years, helping government agencies to figure out how to modernize their own practices, how to work with their own employees, how to transform their human resources practices to the 21st century. And that, in addition to that, focusing on the way their government agencies serve citizens. Dr. Golden has been on the forefront of all of that almost since the day we opened our doors, and has been a leading practitioner in our studio, guiding clients in defense, in civilian services, in the safety practices of federal agencies, in how to do a better job of bringing great services to American citizens. So I'll let Jo talk for a few moments about what she does here, because it's been pretty extraordinary. My role is, I guess I'm chief gatekeeper. That's really kind of my role. I just make sure that Jo and
That's a tiny little bit of
all of the practitioners in our studio have the ability to do to live their best life in our studio and to do the best work we possibly can for our government clients and delivering on their missions. Dr. Golden.
Okay. So how many of you all are familiar with service design as a practice? Go, Bill.
Show off.
Okay, Fjord has a great little video online. It's about a coffee shop. So I'll give you the highlights. This is a really easy way to understand service design. You go into a coffee shop to get your coffee. There are people that serve you. They're the front of the house. They are delivering the customer experience. But the people you don't see delivering the customer experience are the people in the back who are making your treats and restocking coffee and doing all of those things. Then there are the people who are bringing things to the coffee shops, like, supplies, things they're going to sell. Then there's the building of the coffee shop itself, the people who think about how it looks and feels inside and how comfortable it is. And that's kind of your ecosystem for the people involved in the coffee shop. And then, of course, there are the customers, who's coming in to get coffee. So in service design, we think about all of those things. In product creation, the focus is typically on the user. So what's the product? The product is coffee, baked goods. Who's coming in to get the product? The customer. So product design, very focused on the customer. In service design, we're focused on everybody, including the employees serving the customer, which is why Bill was mentioning that we're working in a lot of different places to help improve government employee experiences, because anybody who's ever dealt with a cranky, awful customer service person knows that it's better when people are happy doing their work. So we help them understand new opportunities and to figure out how to, say, better use the data they already have to deliver customer experiences. The government collects a lot of data. It, however, hasn't in many ways invested in the technologies that would allow that data to be of use. There's machine learning and artificial intelligence. Those are just sort of coming on the front, and government agencies are excited about it, but really careful because they're protecting people's personal information a lot of the time. They have all sorts of legal restrictions that private companies don't have, but they can use it to deliver better services. So this is a negotiation we're always going through. How do we modernize and bring the government forward while still paying attention to all the things we have to pay attention to keep people's information safe, to deliver better experiences to the employee as well, and also to the management who needs, say, dashboards to see what's going on, and they can understand the flows of information and work that are going on if they have those tools. So we help create them, but we also help make sure that they actually work for the people who will use them. So that's a kind of long-winded way to talk about what service design is, a little bit about product design, and a little bit about what we do.
And I would say, to add to that, that one of the things that is important in service design and the type of work that we do, there's a couple of things. Number one, we always say we put the human at the heart. So it's a fairly common practice, especially in the technology world, to start with a list of requirements. Here are all the things we need this thing to do. Can you build something that does that? In service design, what we do, we start with what's the problem we're trying to solve? What is the individual? What is the human trying to do? Now, let's figure out what we need to design and build to allow them to be successful in that pursuit. And there's a critical distinction, because you're starting with what is it going to take? And I'll tell you who one of the best practitioners, or a company that's a great practitioner of this in the world, is Apple. They start with what the human being is trying to do, and from there build products that allow them to do that easily, intuitively, and in a way that is actually a delight. And believe it or not, if you look at the research, citizens of this country actually believe that our government should be as good or better in providing services than the private companies and commercial companies that they work with. Now, and as Joe said, I know we've all had experiences in government that probably are not that positive, but that is an expectation, and it's something we actually call liquid expectations. Today, companies compete not just with other companies in their category, but with all the companies that provide services in unique and dynamic ways. So when you go to your bank, you have a lot of expectations about what your bank is going to do for you, both in person and online. But you're comparing that in a lot of ways to how your experience works with Amazon and Facebook and Starbucks, all of these other services that provide extraordinary ways of interacting with you, and different channels to interact with you in really elegant ways. So our expectations are liquid. We don't just compare bank to bank, we compare it to everything else that we interact with day to day. And the second thing to point out is that we're now also learning how to integrate data and building prototypes earlier in our processes of service design, so that our government clients can actually touch and feel and interact with the things that they're going to be providing to, whether it's their employees or their customers, citizens. And that's a critical new component to the design world that we're in, particularly the data part. Data in and of itself is interesting, but if you have a design layer on top of that, to allow individuals to use that data, slice and dice it in ways that are intuitive and easy, you're changing their lives for the better. So that's become a big part of our mission as well. We've recently in our studio introduced both rapid prototyping and data and analytics to the world that we design in, to enhance what we're already doing. Now, and we're looking for a lot of other ways to do that as well. And again, I'll reiterate, Joe's at the forefront of all of that. And Lean Six Sigma is becoming closer to our heart.
Yeah.
Actually, Dr. Golden, I think, is your subject matter expert on Lean Six Sigma, if I'm not mistaken.
That would be a scary thought. No. What I am is somebody who mixes methodologies. So when we started talking about Lean Six Sigma and how we could reinvigorate that practice here at AFS, I got involved with a group of folks who were thinking about what are the connections and influences with design, and how can we use strategies for design thinking to bring more life, say, to workshops, because our workshops are really fun. I'll brag about them. They're fabulous. And so bringing that sense of fun and engagement to different types of activities is also something that we do kind of as a sideline, but it helps us with our practice here at AFS in a number of ways. And the thing I wanted to say about prototypes is I think about prototypes as boondoggle busters. There's some alliteration for you, Scott. They are boondoggle busters because when we have a massive transformation or a shift, say, to a platform like Salesforce, if we prototype a piece of it and we can make that work, and then we can go and we can build on that and say, hey, this works here, let's start expanding it out. We can roll it out with much greater certainty, with much greater security, and with much greater focus on meeting the people's needs that are using it. And that's not possible when you have a stack of requirements this high and a great big thing to build and, a timeline that looks like 10 years, we're going to look at it and it's going to suck and we're going to mothball it. So, that's been the pattern in government, and not to blame that on government, but because of the scale and also the lack of technology that would allow that to be different, it's been kind of a mess over time. So now we're in this agile way of thinking and working where we want to take a part of it and we want to make that part work, and then we're going to build on those parts, and that fits in really well with the Lean Six Sigma approach and with the design approach. So that's really important.
So, of course, we can talk all day about the studio and what it does and how it does it, but certainly it's always best to be able to show in addition to tell. So, Scott, shall we move into the tour or question?
Yeah, I just had a real quick question, because we're in the federal space. Are we looking at state governments? I'm thinking like DMV is a great target that we could...
And an off-used example.
So Accenture Federal doesn't focus on the state and local levels of government. We actually now say our Fjord studios, and by the way, I mentioned earlier there were 10 Fjord studios when Accenture acquired them. There are now 29 around the world. We're actually the largest Fjord studio and the only one that has 2 locations in one metro area. But the Fjord studios outside of DC, who focus on the commercial world, do have practices that look at state and local government as well and apply the methods and techniques that we do in the federal space. Actually, that's where we've kind of been the tail wagging the dog, helping them to understand how you work with government entities and take our great methodologies and apply those in government space. But we have done little to no local and state government work in our practice.
And thanks for clarifying that, Bill. I know you know the answer to that, but I know not everybody does, so thank you. So what we'll do, I'm working under the assumption that we can't bring cameras and things into the studio because of the nature of the content. So if everyone would be kind enough to put their cell phones away and whatnot.
Silence them. We're not a theater.
Yeah, it's not a skiff for you security-minded folks, but just no pictures. For those folks who are online, we apologize, but I'm going to stop recording on the computers right now, and we will be back in
20, 30 minutes.
20, 30 minutes or so. What time is it right now? So my watch says 10. Let's target 10:30 to pick back up for those folks who dialed in.
Great.
All right, thanks. For those who are here, walk this way.
No, this way, this way.
This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, we are recording, and we're going to roll into the next part of the presentation, which isn't nearly as exciting. How do I get that off of there? Sorry, everybody's looking at me.
The X in the corner?
Does that turn off the camera, or does that just remove it? Oh, okay, perfect. So you can still see, but I can't see.
Excellent.
Yay! All right, so next part of the presentation, since we're running a little bit behind, I will do my best to compress a half-hour presentation into about 2.5 hours. So,
And she's on.
oh, outstanding. And if you can confirm that she can see, or hopefully I guess it doesn't even matter as long as you can see the PowerPoints. So what I want to talk about is next generation continuous process improvement or continuous performance improvement. We're deliberately ambiguous with the term CPI because, as you'll see on slide 4, CPI means whatever you need it to mean depending on where you are. So I'm a big fan of ambiguity if it works in my favor. And working in the DC and spending a lot of time in the DoD, good acronyms matter, so flexible acronyms. Anyway, but for those of us who, how many folks in here are trained or at least reasonably familiar with Lean Six Sigma? I know we've got green belts, black belt or green belt?
Just familiar.
Okay. I thought you went through the green belt class, no? Okay. Master black belts, green belts, master black belt. So roughly half the folks in here have at least some colorful belt to wear, and other folks have read some of the stuff and scoffed at it. So anyway, so I'm going to be running a lot of stuff through the Lean Six Sigma filter, but that's because I'm a one-trick pony, and so that's where I come from. If I use other acronyms, and I will use lots of acronyms, please wave your hand and say, Scott, what the heck are you talking about? I will do my best to shift back and translate. And I will forewarn the folks when I'm translating, I'm going to translate 80% explanations. So you'll be like, that's not what BPR is. I know, but it's close enough. You know, that's not what fill in the blank RPA is. That's not what BPMN is. Acronym. Yeah, but it's close enough. So I'm going to speaking it at Mach 2 at 50,000 feet, or for the international students at 20,000 meters, and just trying to overlay lots of different methodologies, because the 80s call, they want their Lean Six Sigma back, right? Welcome to the end of the second decade of the 21st century. There's a better way to do things, all right? The old school Lean, the old school Six Sigma, it's still solid, right? Just like Plan, Do, Check, Act, or Plan, Do, Study, Act. It's practically 100 years old, right? It's a good approach. But the tools and the world have changed, and so how you overlay doing the right thing within a proven method is the challenge. So that's where I'm going to try to take this. That's assuming I can make the slides move. I can't. This is why I'm a process guy, not a technology guy. There we go. All right, so I haven't done justice to all the players here. So first of all, thank you to American Meridian University for putting together this program, this Lean Leaders Saturday Seminar Series. We are being hosted today at Accenture Federal Services, which is a wholly owned subsidiary of Accenture LLP. So direct from your local website, for those who aren't familiar, Accenture writ large is a global 120 plus countries, almost 500,000 employees at this point. We're big. We do lots of stuff in lots of places, which is super cool, but we're owned and operated out of Dublin, Ireland, which makes it a little bit inconvenient to do work with the United States federal government. So a while back, some smart folks said, maybe we should sort of cordon off some folks so they can be wholly dedicated to U.S. government work. And I give you Accenture Federal Services. So we are much smaller. We're only about 10,000 folks, but that's enough to be dangerous. And as some of you have already heard, we have multiple studios, multiple locations around the national capital region. And we are a one-trick pony. We live, breathe, eat, sleep. Our whole reason for existence is to serve the United States federal government, which for me is super awesome because I have this weird problem. I want to actually make a difference in the world. I know, crazy. So many people have said, Scott, we can make you rich. No, they haven't. And I say, no, I wish, but no, I can't do it. I need to make a difference. I need to self-actualize. And I happen to live near the capital of the free world. I mean, this is like the most powerful city in the world. Why would I not want to inject myself into the largest organization of the most powerful country in the world to try to make a difference? one could also ask, why do I have this bruise right in the middle of my forehead from banging my head against walls? But that's, we all have our challenging opportunities. So anyway, that's why I'm here and not here, because personally, I feel like I can make a bigger difference here. I will add to that, and with Dr. Golden in the back of the room, I suspect that she has a similar story. I was running my own company in a past life. I didn't call Accenture, they called me. They said, hey, Scott, we're rebuilding our Lean Six Sigma program. We don't want the same one we had before. We want a new and improved version. Can you do that? And I said, I'm doing that. They said, yeah, we saw your company's website. I mean, can we talk to you? And I'll be very honest. If McKinsey had called me and made the same offer, Deloitte, Booz, any of those guys, if any of them had made the same offer, I would have said, talk to the hand. All right? You are the reason I exist. You're the reason I started my own company, because y'all suck. Y'all just take all the government's money. You never deliver anything. You think a PowerPoint is a product? No, you didn't change anything. Are you kidding me? $5 million for a BPR, which made 300 really pretty slides. I mean, I give them credit for that, but they didn't do anything. And at Accenture, they make those really pretty slides and then say, okay, make sense? Let's make it happen. Like, that's why I made my company, because I wanted somebody to actually do something for the government. And Accenture does it way better than I do, because I had 4 employees, and they have like 10,000. So here I am. So anyway, end of sermon. We really are an awesome company. This really is the only company that could have pulled me away from my baby, my own small business. #1 most sustainable international company, 2019, in the world. #1 most diverse company in the world. Best companies to work for, world's most ethical companies, most admired companies. It's a pretty awesome place to be. I'm not exactly sure why they hired me. I'm a middle-aged white guy, but anyway, I'm bringing their numbers down. Am I allowed to say that? Sorry. Anyway. So now I'm going to brag for just a minute. I'm not bragging to brag. I'm bragging because I want you to have context for where we're about to go. I'm not a one-trick pony. I'm a one-trick pony in that I just do process improvement. But I do it in a lot of weird ways. So yes, I do have a postdoctoral fellowship in quality systems management from American Meridian University, thank you, and American University of Science and Technology. I got my doctorate in business here at AMU in health systems management, master's in education, undergrad in English. And if you look at that, you're like, that's not as geeky technical a background as I would have thought. Well, it was a Bachelor of Science. It was a Master of Science. I do have a lot of engineering certifications. And the Naval Academy, you're pretty much an engineer anyway. So really, this English degree just means I had 1 class in English every semester so I could read a book instead of doing all the calculations and everything. So that's my educational background. But I cut my teeth as a quality wonk. For you ASQ fans, American Society for Quality, ASQ certified quality auditor, quality manager, quality engineer, quality, Lean Six Sigma black belt, blah, 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 blah. Lots of ASQ certs. I spent years as a quality engineer. Big fan of quality. What's the problem with quality? Quality says, don't fall outside of these lines, which means they spend all their time looking here and looking here with a microscope to make sure you're on the right side of that line. And they never look in between and say, you know what? How do we target the middle? Right? How do you optimize? How do you make things best? And so the quality police spend all their time on the fringes saying, oh, good, that was good enough. That bothered me. So I made the natural progression from the specs to the targets. I went from quality to process improvement so I could say, this is all well and good to have lowest common denominator, but we can get better and better and better and better. So that's how I made the shift into process improvement. Along the way, I became a project management wonk, project management professional certified, and Scrum Master certified for you Agile speakers. Process improvement wonk. I've got like 5 Master Black Belt certifications from different organizations. Software. Weirdly enough, I actually worked for a workflow software company. So I have created, for the VA, we built the workflow engine that drove the Veterans Choice Program 2014-2015. So I speak the language of BizFlow. I know we don't use BizFlow. We're more of a Pega take a fan here at Accenture, but, you know, whatever. Trained in robotic process automation, which we'll talk about in a little bit. All of this is to say, I'm sort of a fractal. I have played in a lot of different sandboxes, and jack of all trades, master of none means when I walk into a place that has all the amazing resources like Accenture does, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is awesome. And I speak just enough of the different languages to think maybe we can start getting these guys talking to each other. It's one of the cool things about Jo. She speaks multiple languages. There's a lot of really smart folks that just speak their language, and they're amazing at that. And they don't realize that if we could just change the word Kaizen to Rumble, wow, suddenly we overlap. Question. I'm going to ask it very broadly, so I understand if you don't know the answer, but some of you might get where I'm going with this. Where does innovation happen? If you want to innovate, how do you make innovation happen? If I want to innovate, do I go into Lean Six Sigma and say, we're going to innovate Lean Six Sigma? Or do I go into theory of constraints and say, we're going to innovate theory of constraints? We're going to innovate business process reengineering. We're going to innovate robotic process automation. Where's the innovation happen? It happens when you bring them all together and bang them into each other in inconvenient collisions. Innovation happens at the fringes where the bodies of knowledge bang into each other. So if you've got somebody who's multilingual who can step in and help these folks break down the barriers and start realizing, hey, you know, that's a pretty good methodology. I like the way you do those rumbles. That's better than my Kaizen. But I'm bringing this with me from Kaizen because it works pretty well. Oh, never heard of a Saipuk. Cool, we'll try that. Right? When you break down those barriers between bodies of knowledge, that's where the innovation happens. So I may be a jack of all trades and master of none, but I was kind of made for innovation because I still don't know what I want to do when I grow up. So I keep crossing the barriers. All right, quick overview. We got about the author. I'm going to talk a little bit about next-gen CPI, talk about our integrated approach, and I'm going to bring it all together with a couple of examples because we're at the point now, I've been here for a whopping, let's see, end of April, gosh, 5+ months now. So we're piloting some of this stuff now, which is why I'm really glad that Bill Warner is here because he's owning one of the pilots over at FDA. All right, so what is CPI? CPI, continuous personal improvement, continuous process improvement, continuous performance improvement. Maybe we should just call it CI, continuous improvement. All right. The point is this is not a one and done. This is a lather, rinse, repeat, lather, rinse, repeat, lather, rinse, repeat, because what's the process of innovation? Lather, rinse, repeat, iterate, iterate, iterate. Right? It just gets better and better and better. All right, so next-gen CPI brings together the best parts of people and process and technology. You know who developed the model for people, process, and technology? Actually, people, process, technology, and strategy. I just left strategy out for convenience for this conversation. Accenture, like back in the 80s. Who knew? I didn't know that. I thought I invented it. Turns out, form follows function. So here's the idea. We have an awful lot of folks graduate college, focus on people-centric degrees, not just like HR, but customer-facing stuff where your primary product is interactions with people. You get a lot of folks. I point to the Lean Six Sigma wonks, but not just that. A lot of industrial engineers and a lot of folks focus just on the process. And you get a lot of folks, the IT wonks who focus just on technology, right? So we, in process improvement, have traditionally lived here, go figure, process-centric and process improvement. Where do we need to go? A hint, it's really hard to go straight to the middle. So in theory, what we've got to do is take each of these folks where they are. Once they got their 10,000 hours in, fresh out of college, doing something for 2, 3, 4, 5 years, once you've got a pretty good handle on where you are, you also start to find there are other things that you like to do, right? Some of our process folks are just really good facilitators. Some of our Lean Six Sigma wonks, there's no need to train them as black belts and master black belts. The green belt skill set is all they need because they're just really good at facilitating teams, right? So they naturally lend themselves to sliding over into this, I can't call it a quadrant, what is it, a trident? I don't know. No, that would be a big pointy thing. I don't know. Anyway, they lend themselves to this little overlap in the Venn diagram. And we've got some process wonks who naturally move over to robotic process automation and some of the techie stuff, some of the geeky stuff. We all know those people. They may not be so good with people, but they love their computers, right? And so they overlap in here. And Joe, human-centered design, right? People and technology, right? This is where the design studio lives, is right over here. None of them exclude the others, but they have a primary focus. Our job is try to make it so that everybody, after they've rolled into the second section of their lives, as they become multilingual, we want them to naturally have a path as they become senior, not just managers, not just directors, but leaders of innovation. They need to speak enough languages to bring all these folks together. That's the goal. Does that make sense? Okay. It's not super innovative and creative. Like I said, this model of people, process, and technology has been around since the 80s at Accenture. I just found it on their website last night by accident. I'm like, what? It was like written in crayon. I'm like, oh, that's awesome. It wasn't written in crayon. It was online. But yeah, anyway, it was very, like, sketchy. Wrong word. Okay, I'll stop. So a couple of examples here. So problems may be caused by what? They could be caused by people. Sorry, pause. Problem. Not a good word. Anybody know the literal translation of the two kanji symbols that we translate into English as problem? The literal translation is challenging opportunity. That's a way better way to say it. So for you Lean Six Sigma wonks who are used to using problem statements, opportunity statements. So a lot of our challenging opportunities are caused by people. But sometimes you got the most awesome people trying really hard. You just have a crap process. And I give you the federal government. Sorry, was that out loud? I mean, it's everywhere, and the government is like that too. And sometimes you've got good people, a good process, and you just got wackadoodle 1960s technology written in COBOL, running on some, what used to be a mainframe that's now a little box stuck under somebody's desk in the basement. Same code that they've had for 40 years, and nobody wants to touch it. That's true. I mean, some of us I know in this room have been in those places. Bill's nodding. I've been there. I've been around the world. It's amazing how many companies are still running on those little black boxes that nobody dares to touch. Any young folks in the room, if you want a forever job, go learn COBOL. Because all the old folks are retiring, and you'll be like the only person who can touch that black box. Make big bucks. Anyway, so obviously if that's where our problems come from, that's where our solutions have to come from. All right? We have to have that eclectic bag of tricks. Next-gen CPI takes an integrated approach to problem solving, but it's also a balanced approach. And the idea is to quickly, efficiently, and effectively develop and deploy solutions. Not just stacks of slides saying, hey, we have a good idea. No, execute, deploy those solutions, and you can't do that unless you're doing it with people and process and technology, which is why I like Accenture. All right. By the way, the stuff that we're doing, for those of you who speak the language of strategic and operational and tactical and making sure that people are doing best use of their level in the organization, all of this is a total fractal. All of this gets done the exact same way at the strategic level or at the operational level, at the tactical level. The methodology works the same because people are the same, right? You just use different verbs and nouns, right? But the methodology is consistent. You just have to make sure that when you're talking to folks, you're speaking their language. All of this is a lesson in language. Okay, understanding by example. Let's skip the example unless you read fast, but I will read the bottom here. Every solution requires addressing people, process, and technology from an integrated view, not in isolation. Kirk Nicholas, 2 weeks ago. I want to give Kirk credit. Even though he didn't show up, I'm going to say that really loud in case he's watching this online somewhere. All right, now, what are we really talking about? Are you kidding me? This is not even a complete list. This is me in 5 minutes just burping out all the stuff I could think of offhand. All right, that's parts of people, process, and technology for improving processes. We have human-centered design. We got change management. We got Lean, Six Sigma, theory of constraints, agile, artificial intelligence, process leadership, augmented reality, virtual reality, machine learning, blah, 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 blah. There's no stinking way you can integrate all that, right? Well, maybe. Because here's the funny thing. A lot of the folks who do BPR, business process business process automation, I combined, sorry, that's supposed to be business process automation, re-engineering. I'll fix the slide later. Anyway, so a lot of the folks who do business process re-engineering, they say, oh, I just do strategic reviews of organizations and help them to restructure in a more efficient way. What's the difference between that and restructuring a process? Not a lot. You got to understand the same things. You got to talk to the same subject matter experts. You may be talking at a strategic level instead of a tactical level. But it's the same stinking thing. Robotic process automation. Anybody know what RPA is? I'll give you a hint. It's a sexy name for a macro, right? The idea of saying, hey, you know what? I have people doing this. That's really not, people shouldn't have to read through this and make that decision. Software can do that now. All right, so let's write a macro that looks for keywords or looks for key data. I guess an easy example might be if you have an 800 credit score or above, you automatically get fast-tracked and approved. If you have a 400 credit score or below, you automatically get rejected. People shouldn't have to do that. So putting in this little robot that sniffs for certain data points and does some work distribution logic to simplify things for people's lives, super easy, right? It should be a tiny part of a solution set for the process of process improvement. Knowledge management. I can't manage my knowledge if I don't have a process, because the whole point of knowledge management is to make sure that I have the right data available in the right format so that I can make the right decision at the right time. You can't do KM unless you have process management. But they don't talk to each other. You can go to a week-long KM school down in Virginia Beach. Have you been? It's like 45 minutes from where you guys live. I don't know.
No, my buddy did.
Did he?
Yeah.
Did he learn anything? Yeah, exactly. But he got a piece of paper saying a certified knowledge manager. Whoop, whoop. I would rather have somebody who was a certified green belt and spent an hour or so on a module seeing how KM overlays with the process. But we don't do that. They're completely separate bodies of knowledge, completely separate certifications. This belongs injected into a core process that can be applied everywhere. Data science, machine learning. Does everybody understand the difference, just for level setting? Like when I say artificial intelligence, do you understand how that's different from machine learning? All right, so real quick, and again, for those, somebody on here knows and is just keeping their hand down, they're going to see me trip over myself. So as a rule, artificial intelligence, if you tell it what to look for, it can reach out, sniff around the internet or whatever the database is, and it can find certain kinds of things. And it has ways of prioritizing, looking for keywords, and it's awesome because it can speak whatever language you want. If you're looking for a keyword and you have Google Translator, you can have it look for that same keyword in 50 different languages. And it can look in databases all around the world. And it can find that stuff, and it can say, hey, look, this is what's happening in the world today. And by the way, this word was used this many times, and this word was used this many times. So this is what's trending, and by the way, this was coming out of this country, and this was coming out of this country. And you can see, wow, oh my gosh. The people in England don't care about President Trump's scandal. Who knew? In fact, people more than 50 miles outside of the national capital region don't give a flying fig. Who knew? Artificial intelligence lets us do that real fast and real easy. That's different from machine learning, where machine learning is, hey, computer, watch me. See that? That's a dog. See that? That's a bagel. That's not a dog. That's a bagel. And you can go back and forth with pictures that look closer and closer to, yes, there are pictures of dogs that look like bagels. I'm not making this up, right? And you're just telling it, that's a dog, that's not a dog, that's a dog, that's not a dog. And it's just watching you. And pretty soon, it gets really good at identifying a dog, even a dog that looks a lot like a bagel. And we have no idea how it does it. We just know that it's getting smarter and smarter until it ends up being better than the average person. And suddenly it can scan 10,000 pictures and find the 213 with dogs. It can even count the dogs. How long would it take a person to do that? Bad example. I don't know why you care about how many dogs are in 1,000 pictures, but you get the point. It's like this magic black box. All of these are approaches to improving efficiency, improving effectiveness, using people to best effect, which of course is the whole point. For you Lean Six Sigma folks, what are the 7 wastes? Come on.
Time, transportation, Transportation.
Inventory. Motion. Waiting.
Overproduction.
Overproducing. Overprocessing,
and defects.
Defects.
And then the last one.
Yes, what's the last one? Those are the 7 classic wastes. Right. Tim Wood.
Yeah.
But there's a newish one. It's only been out for like 15 years. What's the 8th waste?
Yeah, underutilization of people's talents.
Engaging people from the neck down. That's a crying shame. The most valuable space in the entire world is from the neck up, and we engage people from the neck down. That's criminal, right? So we have to find some way to engage, and Joe was talking about this earlier today when we were taking the tour of the studio. We have to find some way to engage people from the neck up to best effect. Technology is awesome for that, right? And there's even a word for it. It's called automation, but nobody uses the word because it's too geeky, right? Automation is the best balance of technology and people. And that will always be changing, right? So in the idea of continuous performance improvement, we always have to go back and look. What are we using our people for? Is that the best thing? Can we change the process, integrate different technologies, and use people to better effect somewhere else in some other way? No person is non-value added, but what they're doing could be non-value added, and that's a shame. So all of this stuff is out there. Great, what do we do with all that? I talked about this a little bit. First of all, we have to have a plan. You can't just let people wander through life and think, oh, I'm a process guy, I'm going to be a process guy forever. No, that's a shame, because if they spend their whole life between 2 walls, they never get involved in the innovation, right? We're never taking all the stuff that's between their ears and banging up against what's between somebody else's ears and causing them to come up with some new thing, right? So we have to have a plan. Even if they start in one place, not everybody does. Some folks start in other places, but most people will start in one of the big circles. We've got to have a plan to have them move slowly and steadily around toward the middle. Now, if you get somebody who's like a total geek and they just love it right here and they want deep learning, subject matter expertise in that space, cool, right? And those will be the technophiles, right? But if you want to be a true thought leader, you have to have a plan to evolve your folks and grow your folks to the middle. Yes, sir. It's a good-looking gentleman in the tie.
In healthcare and quality, people talk about patient-centered care.
Yes.
And so, would you say a few words and relate it to your?
Well, you know what, Bob? I could, but I think this young lady right here might be better at answering that question because she spends much more time in patient-centered care than I do. I don't know if you want to address that.
Sure. I mean, that's certainly a passion of mine. I'm a nurse, so certainly, yeah. So patient-centered care is so important because our care is healthcare, and you all know that, and that's why even my biggest fan, I'm a groupie of Joe at Bonney here now because we need certainly health service design in our industry. We need a lot of help in our industry to be able to provide better service. So the patient-centric focus is to be looking at the patient as the center versus the other components of what healthcare is looked at. And then going to the next level, we're looking at more human-centered technology around healthcare so that the technology is not driving healthcare, but that the center is always with the human or the patient. So that's the next generation where you'll hear more of human-centered technology in healthcare as well as patient-centered. But where our focus is to always be looking as the patient is the center, because you all have gone through the healthcare or know people who've gone through the healthcare. We can do it better. You compare the government to a healthcare, we all have challenges. But what we're looking for more is to make that focus is the patient, or as we would say, the human being, and center everything around them.
Now, I can do a slightly different answer to that question. By the way, I apologize to the folks online. I can't see what you're seeing, so for all I know, you're like staring at my belly button. Sorry about that. Back in 2014, 2015, and you actually know this because that was the beginning of my doctoral dissertation action research project when I was working with Tri-West Healthcare Alliance, and they won the contract to help stand up the Veterans Choice Program. The veteran was, it was all about the veteran. What do you do? And in this particular example, we had 30 days, literally 30 days well, the law has just been passed, the budget has just been approved, but the law says that we have to have this implemented so that veterans can make a phone call and can actually use this choice. They can make the choice of whether using the VA or whether going out into the market and using some other, commercial hospital. We are required by law to stand that up by Election Day. This is the beginning of October. Election Day is the beginning of November. Are you kidding me? No. So we didn't even have a contract. It was literally like, hey guys, if we were actually did the contract the right way, it's going to take us longer to let the contract than we have to make this to be compliant with the law. So just trust us. We'll make good on it. TriWest had part of that, and I think HealthNet had the other part. They just split the country in half and said, go figure it out. What do you do? Well, the first thing we did is we divided and conquered. I don't want to get too far down in the weeds, but the patient-centered model, I got to be the guy who created the mutually exclusive, collectively exhaustive decision tree and created the logic so that any veteran could call one number from anywhere, and it would recognize their area code. Oh, wait, you can't do that because people have cell phones, so we didn't know if they're going to HealthNet or they're going to TriWest. How do we simplify the veterans' experience so they get to the right place? When half the people in the country want one place, half the people want another place, and you can't even ask them their zip code, right? Because they might be homeless. And how do you manage this? How do you get them to the right care? So and I won't belabor that, but to come up with a nice, clean, simple system that asks a couple, 3 questions and gets them right to a person, by the way, a person who just got that job a week ago and doesn't know anything about healthcare, and to lay out what are the simplest questions you can ask to get them to 80% of what they need, and then how do you do a soft handoff to the next person to make sure that the next person that you're talking to is the right person. And so all 3 people talking on the phone together to confirm before you do the handoff. It's little things as opposed to press 1, press 2, press 3. Anyway, I'm sorry. I realize I really want to just go brief my zero to hero doctoral dissertation again because it was a good, because there were so many layers of that. But the answer is you can't do it right away. But you can create good enough, and then you can lather, rinse, repeat, lather, rinse, repeat, lather, rinse, repeat, and get deeper and wider as you go. Because he who defends all defends nothing, and you'll never get there. But having an iterative model will always, with of course the patients part of the teams, will always get better and better.
Dr. Bonney is entirely too modest. He did had a congressional mandate, and when he heard from Congress, in 30 days, they said to him, we're mailing out 5 million postcards. We're mailing them out.
And mail them ourselves, by the way, but yes.
and there were not only no call centers, there weren't any people.
Yeah,
there weren't any processes, and he had 30 days and did it by himself. And you did, you know you did. And also when you talk about performance and those metrics, I think there are very simple things you did for veterans, like save lives, not only get them care they could count on, get them care they could get to, but also save their lives. It was a great project. Congratulations.
Prioritizing first things first is probably the hardest part of the patient-centered model. So, for example, what do you do if a veteran calls, and I'm running down a rabbit trail, but you asked the question, sorry, it's your fault. What do you do when a veteran calls and you're at a centralized, one of 3 centralized call centers, and the veteran calls in, and very quickly the person on the phone realizes this person is in a dangerous place. This person is holding a gun in his hand and is debating ending his life because he hasn't been able to get the care that he needs. And he's in pain, and he's got PTSD, and he's stressed out, and he's unemployed, and what do you do? And we had to build that into the model for folks who are making minimum wage, who literally, some of them, this is the first call they've gotten. And you can't just dial 911 because there's no way to reach the 911 person where they are. So to have thought ahead of that, what's going to happen when that happens? The person's on the phone, they can't even dial 911. How do we have them ask the right questions? And we, literally in this case, we gave everybody a paddle. If that happens, you raise your paddle. And if anybody sees the paddle, they get the supervisor as fast as possible. The supervisor goes over and he's dialing one standard number and he's walking over and it's going on speaker and the place practically goes quiet. And, you know, you hear what's going on, you hear the conversation, you hear the concern, you get enough information so that you can tell so you can get dialed in. You stay on the line until you hear the car driving into the driveway of that person because you called the 911 and it's a little town and they're like, oh my gosh, that's Billy Bobob. He lives just down the street. I'll call the sheriff and I'll meet him over there. And we'll call his wife or we'll call his daughter, and that's how it goes down. And I was able to design that system. I was in one of the call centers when it was used. And yeah, I mean, when it's done and that person is, we're still on the phone walking them through the handoff when the person arrives and is talking them down off the ledge, or in this case with a gun. When you hang up, everybody in the room was like, oh, yeah, we saved a life. This matters. It's not on this slide. I think it's on the next slide. Where is it? Oh, crap. It's in here somewhere. Anyway, there's the thing on the whole person. Yeah. Right? Head, hands, heart, higher call. The question that you asked is key to the human-centered design. It's key to process design. It's key to technology. It's all about integrating the whole person and respecting the customer, respecting the person delivering the service, respecting the product itself, knowing that it's not just about a high-quality product, but the person who receives it wants to accomplish some sort of an outcome with that product. So you can't just give them a product and say that's the definition of good. It has to accomplish the outcome that they want, and the outcomes they use it for are constantly changing. It's really, really complicated. And so I'm going to go back to this, and I know I've got to hurry up or we're not going to have enough time for the next presentation. I'm so sorry. But as an example, we have so many different methodologies. We have the define, measure, analyze, improve, control methodology for process improvement. For designing stuff, we have the DeMedi and DeMadby stuff. We have the old Schuhart, Deming cycles of plan, do, check, act, plan, do, study, act. I realize I misrepresented Rumbles here, but I mean, we have lots of processes and methodologies for doing improvement. We also have lots of tools. I mean, I use a thing called a process map. The IT guys use a thing called business process, what's that?
Business process management.
I would say management, but I think it's actually modeling. So business process modeling notation. And the IT guys, if you're doing workflow, you're going to do BPMN. If you're doing process flow, you're doing process mapping. If you're doing human-centered design, I don't know, what do you call your maps? That map thing.
I mean, I would call it a process map or a process flow. Same thing. Okay. And of course, there's variations on the theme, swim lane maps and, internal, inward facing and outward facing. There's so many flavors of all these tools. And then every one of these has their own certification, their own body of knowledge, and all these different roles and responsibilities that are different in all these different organizations. How do you bring all that together? The lexicons are the key. We were talking about this morning. It's crushing. If I go in certain circles and say Kaizen, they will literally slap me upside my head. We don't speak Japanese here. But if I say Rumble, I might get shot. Great.
True story. Norfolk Naval Shipyard, circa 2001. They didn't want to use the term Kaizen. They wanted to use plain English. So they were debating what to call it, a rapid improvement workshop or whatever. And so the teams that ran their Rumbles, the teams that ran their Kaizen events, they decided they were going to call them fast action response teams. What's wrong with that? That's a really bad acronym. That's what's wrong with that. So coming up with standard terminology that I won't say it. Anyway, fast action response. It's true. It's true. For about a month, that's what they were calling them before they were like, ooh, that's a bad idea. They're process improvement engineers. Really? Pi. I'm a pi. Got to come up with better words. Literally, cycle time, process lead time, and throughput time, in some circles, all mean the exact same thing, and in some circles mean completely different things. What are we going to call these things? The ability to integrate all this stuff in a language that makes sense to everybody, you can't do it as a big bang. It's going to be an iterative process. All right, so I'm just going to run through some real quick examples, real quick. If you do Lean, there's your 5-step process. If you do Six Sigma, and by the way, Lean generally focuses more on don't do more with less, do less, right? Stop doing stuff that doesn't matter. Six Sigma tends to focus more on reducing variation, producing a high-quality, consistent product. Theory of constraints says you can do both the Lean and the Six Sigma stuff, but if you don't do it at the constraint, it really makes no difference to the organization. But if you do it at the constraint, it has an enterprise impact even though you did it locally. Cool. There's a 5-step process for that. Agile and Scrum. Look, there's a 5-step process. Hey, business process reengineering. Look, there's a 5-step process. You ever get the feeling that these guys are like in a rut and apparently humans just can't do stuff that involves more than how many fingers you got on one hand? So yeah, that's literally those processes side by side. But you see the overlap. When you start to look at them side by side, you start to see the patterns, and they're all suspiciously similar. So that's where we started. In some cases, some of them were more granular. 2 steps were merged into 1, or 1 was combined to 2. Or in some cases, it only applies where technology is required. Other places, you don't need that step because you're not actually creating a software solution, you're just dealing with people. But when you really start laying them out side by side, it's not that bad. The form follows function, so you can come up with a process that kind of makes sense. I am not pretending what I'm about to show you is right. I'm just saying this is a first stab. Bob, you've seen this before because this was in chapter 5 of my dissertation. All right. So you take the people and the process stuff, and generally they follow this pattern, right? You've got to identify the opportunity, clearly define scope and boundaries and metrics, quantify it. We might call this the measure phase in the Lean Six Sigma world. Then you've got to discover all the stuff around it. Sometimes you're discovering root causes, non-value added, flow impeders. Everybody's getting deeply smart together. Then you say, what's ideal look like? And when you're deeply thoughtful and you understand what ideality looks like, then you're at the point where you can start, actually that shouldn't be analyzed, but anyway, then you're at the point where you can start coming up with potential solutions and implementing the solutions. So that process is pretty much always true. Joe, is that kind of close to what you all do?
Ish.
Ish?
Discover, describe, design, develop, release.
Yeah. Well, so yours is designed around design, develop, debug, release. Yours is designed around producing a technology solution. And
not necessarily. It's whole, I do more not tech-centric work than tech-centric work myself. But yeah, I mean, it works either way.
So does the second loop look suspiciously similar then?
It does. We are less, debugging is, it's not a called out thing, it's just part of the process.
Got it. So again,
it's similar.
Yeah. So and you can even see how similar these 2 loops are. There's one other piece that's missing, and that is the documentation. We all hate documentation, but at some point it's got to happen. So you got to document it, and you've got to validate what's working, and you got to do it all again. So if you have these cycles that are generally happening in process improvement, in technology implementation, in documentation, these are the things that are all happening anyway. If you can make all of that happen in an integrated way so that everybody's learning from each other at the same time, then you've got a model that might actually have legs, because it's not even about what you're doing. It's about how fast you're learning, right? So Agile, how many folks speak Agile here? If I say, okay, 1. Really? Oh, right. Bill goes to Agile training on Monday. That's funny. All right, well, this is your crash course. You can spell it, and you already know what a sprint is. So one of the things that the Agile world does is they have time-boxed sprints. So you have 2 weeks to accomplish what you got to accomplish. And then you roll on to the next sprint, and you got 2 weeks to accomplish that. And the next sprint, 2 weeks to accomplish that. If you synchronize what everybody is doing in 2-week sprints or 3-week sprints or whatever, and you have multiple projects running in synchrony, by the time you finish, and if they're running in similar courses, like you might be designing 5 different sections of a website. One is the store, and one of them is the initial user interface, and one of them is setting up an account. You can have 3 different teams running in parallel that first sprint. And at the end of each one figures out what they did right and wrong. Each one gives feedback to their customer and learns what the customer likes and doesn't like, and then they all work with each other to learn what worked and what didn't work. So everybody's getting super smart, super fast before they start the next sprint, right? That learning cycle acceleration is key. So if you've got synchronized time boxes for all of these things and you're running them all in parallel, you can actually learn a lot, and you can update your documentation a lot faster.
So Scott, I think it's important to also say that you would not design the website that way, but you would build it out that way.
Thank you. That's a really good point.
Design runs ahead of all of this stuff and does not follow the same kind of cadence because we can't necessarily break things down and time box them in the same way. So we would run, say, at an Agile Sprint 0. When everybody's planning their next sprint and figuring out what's going on, we're doing research and we're doing design work there. Whether it's discovery or describing things. But you just think about design as running ahead of the sprint, and we can still do things in a cadence, but it doesn't line up quite as well as everybody, it seems, wishes it would. So that's a big challenge in the industry. There's lots of literature out there right now, and everybody's trying to figure out how do we mesh design and Agile together, and it's not totally organized or there's no recipe yet. How about that?
And so tell me if this sort of matches what you're saying. So what we're doing, and this is our first pilot, and this is one of the things that Bill is the lucky stucky to figure out how to execute. What we did is we took the standard domain. So this is a pilot that we're actually working at FDA right now. What we have is a sprint 0. Mm-hmm. We made it 1 week because that's all we're telling the customer about.
Yes,
but sprint 0 for our teams to go out and do their homework and to get smart and to understand what right probably looks like and to prepare themselves, it's definitely more than a week. But for a placeholder for the customer to say, hey, we're going to do these in 16-week cycles, we just put it out there as a 1 week prep. That's the point where we're actually interacting with them and getting their input into the design. Nowhere near the level that we should, but we're also not producing an electronic product. These are process-only solutions. Right? And then we have these 3-week sprints: define, measure, analyze, improve, control. And we have these. So Lean Six Sigma methodology with time-blocked sprints. And in fact, at the end of any given sprint, what does the team always do? The team will always have these will use the time-proven agile methodology of daily scrums, in this case, every other day because they're not full-time people. At the end of any given sprint, you have a minimum viable product. We're actually going to call it that like the agile world does. This is the definition of done, and we're going to present that at the end of each sprint. But we will not stop. We present that to the customer and say, these are the products that we have produced and the outcomes that we have developed, the things that we have learned, and we have these briefs to make sure the customer understands what we've gotten done and what we're about to do. If the customer doesn't like it, cool. We'll figure out how to pick up what we missed, but we're not stopping. The next sprint starts, in this case, the next day. We start on Wednesdays and end on Tuesdays because you can't count on the government to be there on Monday and Friday. I'm just saying. So we have these interaction points. Anyway, I'm getting way down into the weeds, but the point is what we have is a model that is an agile-based project execution time block with a Six Sigma DMAIC-based structure, with lean team-facilitated solutioning, with Lean Six Sigma and theory of constraints-based tools, so we're doing the right things at the right place to have the biggest impact, agile learning cycles at the end of each phase. We have scaled agile framework parallel projects. We're going to do 5 projects in parallel. And again, for those who speak scaled agile framework, agile safe language, we're going to have all of these in parallel. So each team is running defined phase together. So what's working and not working, they're learning from each other. And each team, at the end of the defined phase, they do a little stand up and figure out what went right and what went wrong. And then the Scrum Masters, our Master Black Belts, come together and share those notes. So they've learned as they go into the measure phase, they're aligned, but they've also updated things so the next set of projects, when they go back into the defined phase, they're better. So it's all about the learning cycles. All right. Scaled agile framework, parallel aligned sprints. All right, and preparations for the Agile software solution two-part. Anyway, we actually were hoping that we would win the digital transformation contract, which would have allowed our approved phase stuff to roll out process improvements, training and people improvements, and technology improvements that we could then pilot for digital transformation using continued sprints. We didn't win that. I won't say who won it. It's deeply unfortunate for everybody that they won it and we didn't. We can't pilot that now. Right. But you get the idea. We don't have the HCD stuff in here, but Bill, you already had a plan for by the time we get through to the third wave, I think it was, you were planning on it. Joe, you didn't know this yet, but we already had penciled in plans to integrate with you to try to bring in some human-centered design. Once we've trained up our customer in a methodology that they can have a standard drumbeat, they're just used to those three phases and they're used to the language and they're used to the way things work, then we could take them to the next level. But in the absence of the digital transformation contract, I don't know what we'll be able to do with that. So anyway, point is, this is stuff we're actually doing, right? That's the actual plan that was briefed to the actual customer over at the FDA. Actually, no, this is going to be briefed Monday. Bill would be briefing it, but Bill's at sync training, so I guess I'm briefing it. I don't know. Anyway, and let me wrap up. I've gone way too long. I know Bob's like, Scott, you're always too long. It's just a normal thing. So our model for deploying this, three places. We're injecting ourselves into existing contracts, right? But with this kind of thinking, we're basically running pilots to validate the models that work with contracts that already exist. All right, we're trying to shape and win new work, and we're injecting ourselves into process improvement within Accenture itself. We have some folks who are Lean Six Sigma trained who have rolled off of contracts and haven't rolled on to new contracts yet. They're not billable. Boom, right? Get in there and do a project in the real world so that Accenture starts to say, oh, yeah, we did one of those Lean Six Sigma Green Belt projects. It was great, right? Anybody here with Accenture who's used the training programs? Holy crap, how many different systems do you have to touch to schedule training? I hate that, right? We can fix that. Anyway, so that's the model we're using to get the word out and change our brand as fast as possible. We've also hired like crazy, right? Hired Kirk end of August. Kirk is our elephant hunter and free-range chicken, and he goes out and he finds new opportunities. We've hired Bill, our Kaizen specialist who's working in the integrated model at FDA. I hired Ted, who's going to do some internal projects, and I can't give you his name yet, but he should be hired in the next 2 weeks. Bill knows who he is because Bill interviewed him. And he's going to help us to lead some integrated Lean Six Sigma, enterprise architecture, BPR, and SMS, which is like visual dashboards. All that is something that's going to be coming out of the Army headquarters in the next couple of weeks. So we're hiring a guy who actually speaks those languages. So all these different pilots are being run in all these different places. We're going to take the best practices of all of them. And then we've got to figure out how to squeeze HCD into that. So I'm really glad Joe stuck around to see, where am I? Yes, we need you too. We just ain't got there yet.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of synergies.
Lots of synergies.
Yep.
So what does next generation CPI look like? Not really sure yet. But we got a pretty good feel for what we can pilot and how we can validate some of the models. And yeah, the goal is integrating head, hands, heart, and higher call, people, process, and technology to best effect. So we're now accepting resumes. Anybody who's not an Accenture employee, if you are good or want to be good at any of these things, there's my contact information, and then we'll shut up and sit down. I think Sharon was on there like, so way too much information. As usual, I've compressed 10 pounds of briefing into 5 pounds of minutes. So does anybody have any questions, or are you too exhausted?
I want to ask if any of the people on the line have questions.
Yeah, folks on the line, let me change this so I can actually see who's talking.
Hello,
Sharon,
hi, this is Sharon. Can you hear me?
No, we can't hear you at all. No, you're good, Dr. Burton. We can hear you.
All right, I don't have any questions, but I think actually the presentation was great in terms of tying all of those models together. It is definitely a need to tie those together and move forward into what really is going to be continuous process improvement. So I think the overall presentation was good. You can definitely see the gap and the need to fill that, and certainly creating the new models will be what is needed to drive towards the future.
Thank you, Dr. Burton, and I also will thank you publicly that without your help dragging me kicking and screaming, I would still be Mr. Bonney and not Dr. Bonney. So Sharon is one of my favorite people.
Hi, Dr. Bonney. This is Dr. Brown Jackson. How are you doing today? Can you hear me?
Another one of my favorite people. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. Excellent presentation, just as Sharon said. I do have a question. How have you thought about or integrated change management processes in order to implement all of these different processes where they come together? Just some of your thoughts about that.
That's a great question. Any other questions? No. So what we do, and this is more built into the somewhat in the black belt, more in the master black belt training. And again, forgive me, I run everything through the Lean Six Sigma filter. The DMAIC process that is the foundation of the pilot that we're running at FDA is built around the phases of team building, forming, storming, norming, and performing. And so between that engagement, getting people engaged and getting them to get to know each other and then comfortable enough to fight with each other and then confident enough to get along and then work together toward the solutions. I'll quote Dr. John Maxwell when I say, everybody hates change unless it's their idea, then they like change. So that's our primary method of change management, is to engage people early and often and let them come up with those good ideas. Ideally, the facilitator asks the right open-ended questions to get the team to come to realizations together, and then we have them implement together. So if I can go back to the model that we're piloting at FDA, what we have is, and it's really hard to see on this slide, I apologize, it wasn't designed for this level of granularity. But what we have in each phase is we have different places where the team works. We have different places basically at the end of every week or at the end of every week and a half. We have places where the process owner steps in. So by our definition at FDA, it's a little different than the definitions in some places, but basically the process owner doesn't necessarily own the whole process, but they are highly influential in the process. But if that person is involved in the day-to-day operations of the team will be maybe less than fully open and honest in their discussions of real problems and real pain points and real potential solutions. So they inject themselves just enough to understand what's going on, to get their fingers on what's going on, to influence it a little bit. And then at the end of each phase, we bring in the next level of leadership, including the whether you call them project sponsors or executive champions, depending on what language. I know you're a Lean Six Sigma trained person, so what you would call the executive champion at the end of each phase. And at key points where we have the red stars, not only the executive champions, but the center director comes in. So the SES comes in, so he can see, for example, at the end of the defined phase, oh, have you scoped this project in a way that I, as the center director, feel like is going to make a big impact on the organization? So he has a chance to influence it. So we inject people at the right places to influence, but we don't inject them all the time to slow things down. And when we do inject them, it's always a status update. It's not a dog and pony show brief. So they have the opportunity to see what's going on, to offer their suggestions, and then to step back out. And finally, the last thing that I'm especially happy with, you can't see it on the slide explicitly, but at the end of actually, technically it's halfway through the improve phase, we do a handoff. So the master black belt, the green belt, the folks who are facilitating the team, at this point we should have a high-performing team that come up with good ideas, what they want to do, and we hand off to the process owner. And at that point, it is no longer our project. It's the process owner's project. So this project that they own the process for, or close enough, and their team is responsible for delivering, and their own project sponsor at a GS-15 level has been involved in briefs to the director for, right? There's a lot of buy-in. And now the process owner knows that they're responsible for executing it. At that point, we step out of the way and we help them and coach them and mentor them and offer them suggestions on how to collect data, how to run pilots, how to execute. We'll help them to write the SOPs during the control phase, but it's their project. So we ride quietly off into the sunset, or for you Monty Python fans, we ride quietly off into the sunset, and they continue to own it and implement it. So that's how we try to integrate the change management model into our Agile Lean Six Sigma model.
Yeah, real quick. So this is the tactical. So this is the tactical side, and
yes,
with Kurt working on the strategic side, getting the organization's leadership, that vision, the strategy, and the execution of the strategy, having that aligned down to the project teams is the part of the change management that we have yet to be able to really crack the nut on at the FDA, but that is something that we're hoping that with the success of the tactical pilot that we're doing this year will open up the opportunities then to even further get their leadership involved and align that vision so that the teams clearly understand through the change management and the process where we're headed.
Yeah, and thank you for bringing that up. So project identification and selection, we have been woefully silent on. These projects were selected specifically as aligning to their strategic plan. So the 20 projects that we executed last year in a traditional Lean Six Sigma way, less than fully successful, really long, really slow. And the 20 projects that we're executing this year are directly off of their 5-year plan for strategic execution. So they have strategically significant projects. So we got the strategy, senior level buy-in. And what you don't see is what Bill was alluding to is the meetings that are going on with our own contract owner, the quality manager and business process improvement manager, GS-15, who owns none of the processes, but owns the process improvement process. So she is a peer trying to influence other peers to do change. So at the operational level, we manage the conversations with her and help her to manage with the business process improvement organizational committee to get the buy-in and support. So you're right. There's a lot of layers going on that I didn't explain. That's actually, I need to make some slides on that. This is really good points. Because this should be longer. I'm sorry. Kim, does that answer your question?
It did. It was outstanding. And I thank you both for kind of bookending both sides of it, because each side is equally important for the success. So I really appreciate that.
When are you going to come work for us?
Oh, okay.
You work with FDA, right?
I do work with them all the time.
I'm waiting for your resume, I'm just saying.
Uh-oh. We'll talk after.
You're a Post-Doctoral fellow from Meridian. Hey, I think that's pretty good credentials. I'm just saying.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Anyone else online?
They're still online, but I think you've answered the questions. Marguerite Youssef from Beirut is online.
Oh, great. How are you? Did you have any questions for us?
Hi, Doctor. Hi, everyone. Thank you for this great presentation. I would like to say something. I don't have a question, only something to say. We all know that quality and safety in healthcare is supported by elegant and powerful concepts, methods, and tools, like you said, to improve our work process. But our best efforts to change things for the better are at risk unless we also address our conversations our conversation process so that we develop and sustain psychological safety and intrinsic motivation, getting people engaged into this change process. We must involve people in coming up with ideas for change. Otherwise, there won't be any change because everyone is resistant to change.
Hey, Marguerite, I don't think I said this since the last time we spoke, but you're awesome.
Thank you.
Well said. All right. Again, I have gone far beyond where I should have gone on the clock. So much for time-boxed execution. I don't know if we want to take a quick break or how we want to handle things as I bring up your slide deck.
Yeah, and I'm just doing a brief, very brief overview. It's more of an invitation than a lecture.
It's about the 2020 campaign for nurses and midwives.
Yeah, can you get the booklet? Can you just get them the
Do you want to take a 5-minute break, Scott, or?
Mine's gonna be pretty brief. So yeah.
Okay, yeah. Let's take a quick brief, brief, and I'll pull up the slides.
With you all.
Can everybody thank Dr. Golden for coming along?
So what we're looking for is nurses they're bringing their design to commission hospitals. Yeah. So I'm working with mainly working with government, but your thing is we'll probably work with your other partners. Right. But our goal is to get the nurses with their ideas to fruition, where they're bringing solutions.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so exciting. Nice to meet you too. God, I gotta run.
Thank you so much for sticking around.
You're welcome. Oh, it's great to hear and having more ideas along the way.
Yeah, at some point we need to do our own.
Give Dr. G one.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Thank you so much.
I think, yes, I think that
Call me Bob, please.
Thank you.
This looks great.
Yeah, it kind of dovetails with something else I've been working on, so I will think more about that.
Yeah, thanks.
You're very welcome. Pleasure. Nice to meet you all too. Thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you for coming over and setting that land speed record.
Of course, my pleasure. Who knew that I would get in the wrong place? Because, okay.
Great.
See y'all later.
Thank you, ma'am.
Shoot, I should be pausing right now. Sorry, I'm like videoing myself staring at my computer.
I have just plug mine in if you want. You want to pull it up?
Scott, that was great.
It was, really.
Thank you.
A lot of work went into that. Is going into that.
Yeah.
A lot.
This conference will now be recorded.
Great.
And it's all yours.
Well, this is wonderful. It's so exciting, and thank you, Dr. Bonney and Dr. Gee, and all of you guys. This is fantastic what's going on, and I'm just here to kind of share with you all and invite you all something that's really exciting that's happening in the world. My name is Dr. Clishia Taylor, and I am a nurse for over 30 years. I am the director now of GHA Institute, which is called Global Health Access Institute. I have been in the area for 30 years. I have a home health care company that's out of Great Falls, Virginia, that we've operated for 30 years. And certainly my colleague here is Beatrice Arajavi, and she's one of the directors with us. And we work in a collaborative approach in trying to make healthcare better. That's been our motto. My background, I'm a psychiatric nurse, and I've worked the whole spectrum of healthcare. I teach at the university level. I do a lot with innovation and emerging health, and certainly all of you that are in this room will be part of what's getting ready to happen in the world, and it's exciting because it's historical. It's never happened before. So a little briefly about, we are here with the 2020 Year of the Nurse and Midwives. It's called Nursing Now campaign. It's never, ever happened before. There's never been a year of nursing in the world, and I'm going to share a little bit about that. And again, I'm with the organization GHA Institute. So just so you all understand, most of you know, how many nurses do you think exist in the world?
A lot. That's like gazillions.
Gazillions.
You know, there is actually members about 19 million, but it's close to 20 million nurses in the world, which is a lot of nurses. So this is a great opportunity to really develop and train nurses, and I'm going to get a little bit more to that. But nurses are the bridge of healthcare. And we know that because most of us have gone through a healthcare place, if not with our family members, and we will, everyone in this room will go through the healthcare model. And again, the nurses are the front line. So a little bit about GHA Institute. So again, this was birthed after we were working in home healthcare with all of our patients. We were realizing that we just got to do healthcare better. And the way we're doing it now is not good enough. We're getting people too late. We're getting people too sick, and we're not doing really healthcare. We're doing sick care. So, and my background is I came to this area because I worked in the White House on the first healthcare reform, and it was certainly a lot of you know didn't do very well because of the political pushback. But now things are changing where people are realizing if we don't change healthcare as a nation, as a world, we're going to have big problems. So. Our mission, our vision in GHA Institute is to train nurses and healthcare professionals on best practices when using emerging technologies. So that's what our organization is about. And these are some pictures of our nurse practitioners. We have informatics. We have people from social work. This is a university we're teaching at. And we're partnering with AMU. We're so thankful for Dr. Gee and the opportunity he has that brings really more of the quality management component into healthcare and the measurements and outcomes. We have an online 3-day interactive course which provides telemedicine and telehealth certifications. We are accredited with the American Nurses Credentialing Center, and we're part of the HIMSS Approved Educational Partners, which is Health Information Management Systems Society. So we are one of their partners as well. How many know what telemedicine and telehealth is? I would expect this whole room. But those who don't know, is using telecommunication to do healthcare. And a big component is that in our industry, a lot of people are resistant to it, and those who are not resistant to it are not doing it correctly. So again, our focus is to create best practices in that. So we have a telehealth lab, which is why I love Joe's simulation. We have in our telehealth lab, we have a telehealth simulation, we have mock launching of telehealth programs, telehealth adoption techniques, we do telehealth devices, workshops, subject matter experts come and speak, such as many of you will be, and AI in healthcare, cyber health security. Again, the focus being training healthcare professionals to be able to bring in technology as we're training healthcare patients. And so we are supporters of the 2020 Year of the Nurse and Midwife, which is the Nursing Now movement. And what is that? Okay, so in January 2019, the World Health Organization, WHO, Director General, officially declared 2020 would be the Year of the Nurse and Midwife. This has never happened before. This is an historical moment in our world where the whole world is coming together to make nurses the focus and midwives. So Dr. Gabrisis, who is the WHO director, stated that nurses are the bridge of healthcare, a crucial link between the people of the community and the complex healthcare. And as essence, nurses are the front line. I guess you would call them army people, the military people. They're in the army, right? They're on the front line, so we have to get behind them. So around the world, over 20 million nurses will be thrilled to see this profession recognized in this way. This is a once-in-a-generation opportunity for world governments to really show nurses and midwives how much they are valued. So Dr. Gabrisis said, because of this, they, nurses and midwives, are the key factors in achieving universal health coverage, which is a WHO initiative being spearheaded with the goal of bringing adequate health care to mankind across the globe. So, Dr. Gabrisis, they chose the WHO, and he said, we choose this declaration by reminding everyone that in 2020 is also the 200th anniversary of Florence Nightingale. Who's ever heard of Florence Nightingale? Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about it, just very briefly. But Dr. Gabrisis said, we need to celebrate people like her who have contributed greatly to humanity. A little bit about her. Who is Florence Nightingale? So Florence Nightingale was born in May 1820 into a wealthy, upper-class, and well-connected British family. She was a statistician. She was an early data scientist. She was a social reformer who was a societal champion of modern nursing. She was a disruptive innovator. If you look at what Florence Nightingale did, she disrupted healthcare. And that next wave is happening now in our generation. Healthcare is going to be disrupted by this next wave of what's happening in the world. So she instituted environmental changes in hospitals and clinic settings. They talk about that now. Oh, if we change the environments in the hospital, we can improve patient care. She was talking about that in 1820. She instituted nursing rounds at nights using lamps to monitor the sick and dying. So you'll hear doctors saying, we're doing our rounds now. That was Florence Nightingale who started that. Infection control monitoring by using statistics to measure quality outcome. That was Florence Nightingale that started that. She's the one that went to the British hospitals and said, let's look at what the statistics are showing where the infections are, how we can manage patients, and use that data to better provide care. She created the first nursing school, and there's so much more of what she did. So she's just been a real champion in healthcare and a model, and it's great that they're deciding this is the year of nurses, that they're going to look at her as the person that we want to get nursing to and healthcare to. So WHO's agenda? Again, is universal health coverage, part of the WHO's agenda to bring adequate healthcare to all people across all communities. Universal healthcare mission is to bring quality health coverage to people of all communities and socioeconomical status, focus on lower income citizens who are typically most financially devastated by costs of primary care, acute care, and don't have the means to participate in preventative care. So as Dr. Bonney said, we want to bring good. He wants to, my heart is to do good in the world, do good for humanity. This is an opportunity for us to help those who are on the front line do good, because you have ideas, you have models and thoughts. Take all of that to be able to bring it to the nursing industry. It's going to really revolutionize healthcare. Many of you may know who Kate Middleton. So she is the one who endorsed the Nursing Now campaign, and she's married to Prince William. She's behind this whole big movement. She said nurses are the heart of most health teams, playing a crucial role in health promotion, disease prevention, and treatment. As health professionals who are the closest to the community, they have a particular role in developing new models of community-based care and supporting local efforts to promote health and prevent diseases. So a little bit about what we're doing with GHA. We've created we're the first to create a nursing incubator center. There is no nursing incubator center. So this is one of our graduates, Dr. Yulia. She created this tool after she graduated out of our course that works with discharge planners. So basically, you'll go into a hospital now, and you may have diabetes or you may have Parkinson's. Nobody really has been driving that. And so everyone does different methods. Well, she created this platform after she took our course and basically has used this, and we're taking it through the incubator phases of launching it into communities so that clinicians can use this tool to guide them on how they can manage patients, how they can prepare them for discharging. So she has this called HAS. This is one of our incubator members, I should say, who's going through the process. And again, this is an opportunity with nursing is to be able to get them developed, take their ideas from cradle to grave. So, and the launches of they call the campaign, it's called the Nightingale Challenge 2020. And what is it? The Nightingale Challenge 2020 calls for every employer of nurses globally to provide leadership and development training to nurses and midwives next year. So we're a little early, because this doesn't start to 2020, but we're already getting and moving, and this is one of our first launches with AMU as a partner. So again, this is only the beginning, so we're asking all of you to think how you can join GHA and the Nursing 20 campaign to bring awareness to the the year of nurses and midwives. And again, our focus for GHA is using the emerging technology. So I want to thank you all for allowing us to share, and this is our information, and we look forward to a collaborative partnership with all the AMU and Accenture and anyone else that joins in. Yes, Dr. Gee.
Dr. Bonney, I just want to mention of the three people on the line, Dr. Burton is a co-author.
Yes, she is,
with Dr. Taylor of a textbook on telehealth. Dr. Kim Brown-Jackson is a certified telehealth professional, and AMU has given Marguerite Youssef, who is RN as well, a scholarship to take this particular course.
Nice.
And we'll be, the nurses who come into Dr. Taylor's programs are nurses and are looking for internships. So it seems to me that they would be excellent if they had a sort of background of Six Sigma, you know what I mean? And working as
Development,
they could get
leadership development.
credit for degrees and programs that everybody would benefit from it. So I just mentioned that.
Nice, yeah, absolutely.
We got 20 million of them to do that with, so we're gonna be very busy.
We can enroll all of them next week.
Yeah. Might have to call up a few extra instructors.
Might have to change our GoToMeeting subscription to handle 20 million at once.
Well, you know, we're already working with Kenya and other countries that are involved, and certainly like Lebanon, and there's gonna be many, my colleagues from Colombia, so South and Central America, are already on the platform, so we've got quite a bit to do. We have an intern from China. There are 3 million nurses to serve 1.4 billion people, which is not enough. Wow. So emerging technologies and learning development and leadership skills are going to be critical to be able to manage all of these people. So with that, I don't want to take too much, because I know, but I want to let you share those are little brochures about what we're doing in our campaign. So we look forward to our collaborative partnership with you all. Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Now I'm going to close out the recording.